Pick up a ball, any ball, a tennis ball, a baseball, a rock, whatever you have nearby. Now throw it as far as you can. Congratulations! You just did something that no other animal on Earth can do. Not like you can, anyway. A chimpanzee, they're 5 times stronger than you. Their muscles can generate forces that would tear your arm off. But throw a ball? Maximum 30 kilometers per hour and completely inaccurate. It'll go in some random direction, probably not where they intended. You? Even without any training, you can probably throw it 60 to 70 kilometers per hour. With practice, a professional baseball pitcher can throw it 160 kilometers per hour. That's faster than most cars drive in a city. A gorilla, despite being incredibly powerful, can barely throw at all. An orangutan? They don't even try. Monkeys, cats, dogs, bears, none of them can throw with any accuracy or speed. Only humans. This isn't just a fun party trick. This seemingly simple ability, the ability to throw objects quickly and accurately, fundamentally changed the course of human evolution. It transformed us from prey animals hiding in trees to apex predators dominating the planet. It gave us ranged weapons when every other predator was limited to teeth and claws. It allowed us to hunt animals 10 times our size without getting close enough to be killed. It enabled the atlatl, the weapon we talked about in an earlier video, the technology that made humans unstoppable. But why? Why can we throw and no other animal can? What makes human shoulders, arms, and brains so uniquely suited for this panoply? Today, we're going to break down the biomechanics, the evolution, and the consequences of humanity's greatest superpower, the power to throw. And today, we will be breaking it down. Let's start with a demonstration that really drives home just how unique human throwing is. In the early 2000s, researchers at Harvard University conducted a series of experiments comparing throwing ability across species. They worked with chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, who share about 98.8% of our DNA. If any animal could throw like us, it should be chimps, right? Wrong. The researchers set up a simple test. They gave chimps and humans the same task: pick up a ball, throw it, try to hit the target. The results were shocking. Adult chimpanzees, despite being far stronger than adult humans, could barely throw the ball at 30 kilometers per hour, and their accuracy was terrible. The balls went everywhere except where the chimps seemed to want them to go. Even untrained adult humans, people who never played sports, who hadn't thrown anything since elementary school, could easily throw at 60 to 70 kilometers per hour. And they were reasonably accurate, able to hit targets with some consistency. Trained athletes? Professional baseball pitchers regularly throw at 140 to 160 kilometers per hour. The fastest recorded pitch in baseball history was 169 kilometers per hour, thrown by Aroldis Chapman in 2010. That's faster than most highway speed limits. A javelin thrower can launch a spear at over 100 kilometers per hour with enough accuracy to hit a target from 90 meters away. That's the length of a football field. Even children can outthrow adult chimpanzees. A 10-year-old kid who plays Little League can throw harder and more accurately than the strongest ape on the planet. This isn't a small difference. This is a massive, fundamental gap. Humans are orders of magnitude better at throwing than any other species. And it's not because we're stronger. We're not. It's because our bodies are built differently. So what makes human throwing so special? What's different about our anatomy that allows us to do this? The answer starts with the shoulder. Your shoulder is one of the most remarkable pieces of evolutionary engineering in the animal kingdom. It's a ball and socket joint, meaning the round head of your upper arm bone, the humerus, fits into a shallow cup in your shoulder blade, the scapula. But here's what makes it special. Unlike most ball and socket joints in nature, your shoulder is incredibly mobile. It can rotate in almost any direction. You can move your arm forward, backward, up, down, and in complete circles. You have nearly 360 degrees of motion. This is unusual. Most animals, even other primates, have much more restricted shoulder movement. A chimpanzee's shoulder is built for climbing, for hanging from branches, for supporting their body weight. It's strong, but not particularly mobile in the ways that matter for throwing. Look at a chimp trying to throw, and you'll notice something. They throw from their elbow, using mostly their forearm. Their shoulder barely rotates. It's like trying to throw a ball while keeping your shoulder locked in place. You might be able to fling it a little bit, but you're not getting any power. Humans throw with their entire body, and it starts with the shoulder's ability to rotate backward, way back, further than any other primate can manage. This is called external rotation, and it's the key to everything. When you wind up for a throw, you're rotating your shoulder backward, sometimes more than 180 degrees from the forward throwing position. This stretches the muscles and tendons around your shoulder, storing elastic energy like pulling back a slingshot. And here's where it gets really interesting. Your shoulder isn't the only joint involved. Throwing is what biomechanists call a kinetic chain, a sequence of movements that transfer energy through your entire body. It starts with your legs. When you throw, you push off with your back leg, generating force from the ground. That force transfers up through your hips as you rotate your pelvis. Your torso twists, adding more rotational energy. Your shoulder rotates forward violently, accelerating your arm. Your elbow extends at the last moment, and finally, your wrist snaps forward, releasing the projectile. All of this happens in less than a second, and every part of the chain has to fire in perfect sequence with perfect timing. If your hips rotate too early, you lose power. If your elbow extends too late, you lose accuracy. Your brain is orchestrating an incredibly complex series of muscle contractions, all timed to the millisecond. And you do this without thinking. You've done it so many times that it's automatic, programmed into your motor cortex, as natural as walking. But there's another critical component to human throwing that's often overlooked: elastic energy storage. Your tendons and ligaments aren't just passive connectors between muscles and bones. They're springs, biological springs that can store and release energy. When you wind up for a throw, rotating your shoulder backward, you're stretching the tendons in your shoulder and chest. These tendons, particularly the ones connecting your pectoral muscles and rotator cuff, are incredibly elastic. They stretch like rubber bands, storing potential energy. Then, when you begin your forward throw, that stored energy is released. The tendons snap back, adding power to your throw that doesn't come from your muscles alone. It's extra, free energy, courtesy of elastic recoil. This is why professional pitchers can throw so fast. It's not just muscle strength, it's the efficient use of elastic energy storage. They wind up further, store more energy, and release it more efficiently than amateur throwers. Chimpanzees don't have this. Their shoulder anatomy doesn't allow for the same range of motion, so they can't store as much elastic energy, and their tendons aren't structured the same way. They're built for slow, powerful climbing movements, not explosive throwing. There's also a neurological component that's just as important as the physical anatomy. Throwing requires extraordinary hand-eye coordination and predictive calculation. Think about what your brain has to do when you throw at a moving target. You have to track the target's current position, predict where it will be in the future, calculate the trajectory needed to hit that future position, account for gravity, air resistance, and the weight of the object you're throwing, coordinate the timing of every muscle in the kinetic chain, and do all of this in a fraction of a second. This is one of the most complex motor tasks humans perform. It requires massive amounts of processing power from your cerebellum, the part of your brain responsible for motor control, and your parietal cortex, which handles spatial reasoning. Studies using brain imaging have shown that when expert throwers prepare to throw, their brains light up with activity across multiple regions. It's not just one area, it's a coordinated effort involving visual processing, motor planning, spatial calculation, and muscle control. And here's the fascinating part. The neural circuits that make throwing possible are probably the same ones that allow humans to make and use complex tools. Both require fine motor control, spatial reasoning, and the ability to plan multiple steps ahead. Some researchers have even suggested that the evolution of throwing ability and the evolution of tool making are linked, that improvements in one drove improvements in the other, creating a feedback loop that made humans increasingly skilled at manipulating objects with precision. So when did all this evolve? When did humans develop the ability to throw? The fossil record gives us some clues. By looking at the shape of bones, particularly the shoulder socket, arm bones, and vertebrae, paleoanthropologists can infer how much range of motion an ancient hominin had. Australopithecus, our distant ancestors who lived 4 million years ago, had shoulders that were still quite ape-like. Their shoulder sockets were oriented upward, good for climbing and hanging, but not ideal for throwing. They probably couldn't throw any better than modern chimpanzees. But around 2 million years ago, something changed. Homo erectus appears in the fossil record, and their anatomy is different. Their shoulder sockets are oriented more laterally, similar to modern humans. Their arm bones show signs of muscle attachments that suggest powerful throwing muscles, and their waist, the vertebrae and pelvis, shows increased flexibility for torso rotation. In other words, Homo erectus was built to throw. Not as well as modern humans probably, but far better than any earlier hominin. They could generate significant speed and reasonable accuracy. And this timing is important because Homo erectus was also the first hominin to be a serious hunter. Earlier hominins were probably scavengers, opportunistically eating meat when they could find it. But Homo erectus actively hunted large game. We have fossil sites with animal bones that show clear evidence of hunting, not just scavenging. How did they hunt? Probably by throwing rocks to stun or injure prey, throwing wooden spears, later throwing spears with stone points, and eventually using tools like the atlatl to throw even farther and harder. The ability to throw transformed Homo erectus from a marginal scavenger into an effective predator, and it opened up new ecological niches, new sources of food, and new evolutionary pressures that would continue to shape the human lineage. By the time we get to Homo sapiens, anatomically modern humans who appear around 300,000 years ago, the throwing anatomy is fully developed. Our shoulders, arms, torsos, and brains are optimized for throwing. We are, without exaggeration, the best throwers the Earth has ever produced. Now let's talk about why this mattered so much. What did the ability to throw actually do for human evolution? First, and most obviously, it made us better hunters. And not just a little better, dramatically, fundamentally better. Before throwing, hominins hunting large animals had to get close, really close enough to stab with a thrusting spear or club. This is incredibly dangerous. A cornered bison can gore you with its horns. A mammoth can crush you with its trunk. A wild boar can rip you open with its tusks. But if you can throw, you can kill from a distance. You can stand 20, 30, 50 meters away, outside the animal's ability to reach you, and hurl projectiles until it's wounded enough to approach safely. This changes everything. Suddenly, hunting large, dangerous animals is not a suicidal proposition. It's risky, sure, but manageable, and the rewards are enormous. One mammoth provides enough meat to feed a whole group for weeks. The atlatl, which we covered in an earlier video, took this even further. By using a lever to extend the arm and increase throwing speed, hunters could launch spears at 100+ kilometers per hour from 60+ meters away. No animal could defend against that. No animal had evolved to deal with projectiles coming from that distance at that speed. Humans became ranged attackers in a world of melee combat, and that was a game changer. But throwing wasn't just useful for hunting, it was also critical for defense and competition. If a predator approached your camp, you could throw rocks to drive it away. Throwing has a psychological impact beyond the physical damage. Animals instinctively fear objects flying at them, even if the objects aren't particularly dangerous. A well-aimed rock to the head of a hyena or wild dog might not kill it, but it will make it think twice about attacking. And throwing was useful in conflicts between human groups. We don't like to think about it, but prehistory was not always peaceful. Different groups competed for territory, resources, and mates. Violence happened, and the ability to throw rocks, spears, or other projectiles gave an enormous advantage in those conflicts. You could attack from a distance, ambush from cover, and inflict casualties without exposing yourself to hand-to-hand combat. This probably escalated the lethality of human violence, but it may also have created pressure for better cooperation and larger social groups, since a coordinated group of throwers is much more effective than individuals acting alone. There's even a hypothesis proposed by neuroscientist William Calvin and others that throwing may have driven the evolution of larger brains in humans. Here's the logic. Throwing, especially throwing at moving targets, requires extraordinary cognitive ability. You have to predict movement, calculate trajectories, plan multiple steps ahead, and execute with precise timing. These are exactly the kinds of cognitive skills that are useful for other complex human behaviors, like tool-making, language, and social cooperation. Individuals who were better at throwing would have been better hunters. Better hunters would have had better nutrition, more status in the group, and more reproductive success. Over thousands of generations, this creates selection pressure for the cognitive and anatomical traits that make good throwers. And those traits, once they evolve, are useful for other things too. A brain that's good at calculating projectile motion is also good at figuring out how to make a complex tool or how to communicate abstract ideas. So throwing may have been a driver, or at least a contributor, to the expansion of the human brain. Obviously, it's not the only factor, but it's probably part of the story. Fast forward to the present. We don't hunt mammoths anymore. We don't need to throw rocks at predators. But the anatomy and neurology that evolved for throwing are still with us, still part of what makes us human. And we still throw all the time, just for different reasons. Sports are the most obvious example. Baseball, cricket, American football, basketball, handball, javelin, discus, shot put, all of these sports are built around throwing. We've created entire industries, global competitions, and cultural institutions around the human ability to throw objects. Why? Because throwing is deeply satisfying to us. It activates ancient circuits in our brains, circuits that evolved over millions of years to reward successful hunting. When you throw a ball and it goes exactly where you intended, when you nail a target from across the room, your brain releases dopamine. It feels good because evolutionarily, accurate throwing meant food, safety, and survival. Even children who have never hunted, who have no practical need to throw, spend hours throwing balls. It's instinctive. It's play, but it's also practice. Kids are honing a skill that their ancestors needed to survive, even though they'll probably never use it for hunting. And we've extended the throwing principle far beyond physical objects. Arrows, bullets, missiles, rockets, all of these are essentially advanced forms of throwing. We've built machines that can throw projectiles faster and farther than any human arm. But the basic concept, accelerate an object and launch it at a target, that's the same principle that our ancestors used 2 million years ago. Human civilization is built on projectile technology, and projectile technology is built on the unique human ability to throw. There is, of course, a downside to all this. Our shoulders, optimized as they are for throwing, are also prone to injury. Throwing puts enormous stress on the shoulder joint, particularly the rotator cuff, the group of muscles and tendons that stabilize the shoulder. Professional pitchers who throw at maximum velocity hundreds of times per season frequently develop rotator cuff injuries, labrum tears, and other shoulder damage. Even recreational athletes who throw a lot, tennis players, quarterbacks, javelin throwers, often develop shoulder problems later in life. The joint is incredibly mobile, which is great for throwing, but that mobility comes at the cost of stability. It's easier to injure than a more restricted joint would be. This is a trade-off. Evolution doesn't create perfect solutions, it creates good enough solutions that maximize reproductive success in the environments where the organism lives. For our ancestors, the benefits of being able to throw, better hunting, better defense, more food, outweighed the risks of shoulder injury. And even today, despite the injury risks, we keep throwing because it's part of who we are. Let me give you an experiment to try. Stand up, pick up something light and safe to throw, a ball, a wadded-up piece of paper, whatever. Now throw it across the room. But this time, pay attention to what your body does. Feel your legs push off, feel your hips rotate, feel your torso twist. Notice how your shoulder winds back, then whips forward. Feel the chain of motion traveling through your body, culminating in the release. You just activated a kinetic sequence that took millions of years to evolve. You used anatomy that's unique to humans, that no other species on Earth possesses. You coordinated dozens of muscles with millisecond timing, guided by neural circuits in your brain that calculated trajectory and released the object at exactly the right moment. And you did it without thinking. It's so natural, so automatic, that you probably don't even realize how extraordinary it is. But it is extraordinary. You have a superpower, a biological adaptation that allowed your ancestors to thrive in environments where they should have been prey, to hunt animals far larger and stronger than themselves, to dominate ecosystems across the planet. And that superpower is still with you, encoded in your DNA, wired into your nervous system, built into the structure of your bones and muscles. The ability to throw is not just a skill, it's a fundamental part of what makes us human. It shaped our evolution, our brains, our behavior, and our culture. Chimpanzees, despite being our closest relatives, despite sharing nearly 99% of our DNA, cannot throw like we can. They never will. They're on a different evolutionary path, shaped by different pressures, adapted to different lifestyles. But we, humans, we are the throwing ape, and that changed everything. Every time you throw a ball, you're using an ability that's 2 million years old, an ability that made Homo erectus into successful hunters, an ability that allowed Homo sapiens to spread across the globe, adapting to every environment, conquering every ecosystem. An ability that more than almost any other single trait made us human. So the next time someone asks you what makes humans special, what separates us from other animals, you can tell them about our big brains, our language, our tool use. All of that is true and important, but you can also tell them this: we can throw, and no other animal on Earth can do it like we do. That simple act, picking up an object and hurling it through the air with speed and accuracy, is one of the most uniquely human things we do. It's a gift from our ancestors, a product of millions of years of evolution, a testament to the power of natural selection to shape bodies and minds in remarkable ways. We are the species that learn to kill from a distance, the species that turned stones and sticks into lethal projectiles, the species that invented ranged weapons and eventually ranged warfare. And it all started with a simple throw. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of humanity's most unique abilities, hit that like button. Leave a comment below and tell me what's the farthest you've ever thrown something. What's your most impressive throwing story? I'd love to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos about human evolution. the adaptations that made us who we are, and the surprising ways our ancient past still shapes our present. If you haven't already, check out the video on the Atlo, the throwing weapon that used this same ability to make humans apex predators. It all connects. I'll see you in the next one.